Hey, what's going on everyone? We are back with another Project FireTeam video. The last couple days have been pretty crazy in the fact that we've seen quite an uptick in the number of viewers and subscribers on this channel, which is amazing. Lots of people with a lot of passion for Destiny and looter shooters coming in, which is incredible news. So I want to do a video that kind of just level set what exactly Project FireTeam is in the long run, because I realized up to this point, though there have been videos talking about like what our hopes are for the project and why the project's been started, there isn't anything that really gives concrete information about what the long-term goals are and what other systems you're going to see, other than the few videos that we've covered so far about like death and movement, looting, shooting, etc. So that's what this video is going to be. We're going to cover a wide array of topics today. Some elements in these topics are going to be much more detailed than others. Some will be more top line, and the ones that are more top line we will eventually have dedicated videos towards. So let's dive in. The topics we're going to be talking about are as follows. Talking about us as developers, design philosophy, multiplayer, planned systems, loot, endgame content, monetization, our release plan, and the coming months. So let's dive in. Us as developers. I've touched on this briefly in previous videos, but there are just two of us working on this game. And despite some random comment I saw on a Reddit thread, we are not ex-Bungie employees. Neither of us have a history in the video game development industry. Both of us come from separate fields unrelated to this. We are just two people that are interested in looter shooters, and we like Destiny. We're sad that we see Destiny coming to an end, so we decided to take our own stab at our own looter shooter. We decided to start making this game because we saw there's going to be a gap where Destiny was. And as I mentioned in our very first video, it always felt like that Destiny was never able to come quite to its full potential with different ideas and elements that the developers want to do, but the heads of the company would not allow. Most looter shooters that we see on the market are usually third person or cover focused. There's obviously a few exceptions, but that's what we see the majority of. Warframe's a fantastic game, but isn't the same as Destiny. Division 2, also a fantastic game, but very different than Destiny. We are looking for a game that feels like Destiny, and we know that there's other people out there, just from that initial support from the ingoing videos. So we wanted to create something with that same vibe. At the end of the day, both me and my co-dev both really like game design, theory, loot design, and it just kind of makes sense to bring this all together and kind of try working on this project together. Everything in these upcoming other topics we're going to go through, you should see them as a wish list, but they also feel realistic to us. This wish list allows us to prevent scope creep and be realistic on what type of game two people can design. But at the end of the day, we also have to be mindful that it's early in development. So the list that we're going to go through today might change as we move along through the development phases and once we strengthen up some of our soft skills. Some of the stuff, actually a lot of the stuff in this video also, you're not going to see or hear more about for a long time. It won't be in the prototype, it might not even be in the demo. Either this is because they're low priorities or much larger undertakings, or there's other things that just really need to be focused on first. I'm not going to say every particular item in this list if it's high priority or low priority, but if I mention something in this and like months go by and you don't hear about it, don't assume that's just because we talked about it and we scrapped the idea. It's likely it's just not the top of our list. These things will come eventually. We will talk more about them when the time comes, and I'm always happy to talk about it too if people have questions about specific things. Even if I haven't chatted about it since this video, feel free to ping me about it. Let's dive into design philosophy. There's three core elements that we want Project FireTeam to be focused around. First is loot, which I have multiple videos that talk in depth about, and we'll have a small section talking a little bit more about it later in this video. The second is gunplay, which I mentioned in one of our very first videos. Destiny feels really good because of its gunplay. Even when the game was at its worst, people would come back for that shooting element. It was addictive, it felt good. And finally, movement as well. Movement's very important to us, how you move around the level, floatiness, jumping puzzles, jumping around terrain. All those elements are really important, so bringing loot, gunplay, and movement together, those are going to be the things that we're going to be focusing our most time and development towards to feeling as best as possible. One thing that my co-dev and I agreed on very early is that we're going to be focusing on making content that is deep rather than wide, focusing on reusability. What I mean by that is creating stuff that the players aren't going to see only once and then never again. Content that is quickly thrown away, is only a single one-hit mission and then never touched again. That's not a good use of developer time. It's very important to us that since there's only two of us, that anything that we create can be reused again later down the road. And since there will be downtime in between us creating content, we want to make sure that this other content that we're creating gives players things to do while we cook up that new stuff. By creating content that is deep rather than wide, it means there's a lot more interaction and engagement with it, and it makes hours put into something a lot more fulfilling and worthwhile. And building off of that, that means we're going to be building detailed handcrafted levels, not patrol zones. This is something that the two of us talked about early on and decided that open patrol spaces, large open roam areas, is not a good use of our time. As much as Destiny has these really nice spaces, it takes a lot of effort to create massive maps with a lot of things going on in them. And I'm not even gonna lie, I don't even think Destiny properly fulfills this. There's dead moments, there's times where there's nothing going on. Once you've completed an area, you found all of its secrets, there's not a lot left to do there. And it kind of just makes that space a dead area, and it uses up a lot of memory, honestly, also. So instead, we're going to be putting that effort into these detailed handcrafted levels. So you can think of similar are like Destiny Strikes or shorter missions. And then within these maps, though, we're going to still give players a reason to explore, hiding secrets within them, adding in elements that change when you do the mission from time to time to give it a little bit of a fresh feel, go over go. Think of it as kind of a Destiny Strike, but with some more interactions in it. And this is something I'll be touching a little bit more on when we get to the section that talks about endgame content. So that kind of covers what our core design philosophies are. Again, the whole idea here is that we're making stuff worth playing for the player and not only playing once, but having a reason to go back and keep interacting with it time and time again. Alright, let's jump into the multiplayer section here, because that's very important when you talk about games that are similar to Destiny, RPGs, and MMOs. Let's get this out the gate really quickly. This game is not an MMO. We are not going to be defining it as an MMO. You are not going to have spaces with dozens upon dozens of people within the same area at the same time. The game will be running off of dedicated servers, but I do need to call out that multiplayer is also the section that we are learning the most about and something that we're constantly iterating on. The game will have matchmaking. I think that games like this are very important, that if you are somebody that's normally a solo player, but there's an activity that you really want to find other people, there will be matchmaking. We'll also eventually be having our own dedicated Discord to help players find other players. There will not be PvP. Now, I know there are a lot of people out there that are fans of PvP games, such as Call of Duty, and I know Destiny has its own PvP, but I'm going to just rip off that band-aid right now. We have no plans for PvP, and I don't think we ever will. Neither me or my co-dev have any interest in it. That's the Crucible is the one thing that we don't really interact with in Destiny at all. And honestly, it would eat up a lot of dev and balance time. We would have to be creating specific PvP maps. All the traits that we are creating for the sandbox work both against PvE and PvP, and the amount of balance that would have to go into it would just be an insane undertaking. I don't think we would be able to create a PvP experience that people would enjoy, because that's not our background. We spend a lot of our times in raids, strikes, dungeons, and that's where we'll be putting our efforts in. Now, as I just mentioned, we don't have intention to have patrol zones where you can come across random players, but we do know that the Destiny Tower is a really fun social space. We also love areas like in Darktide where you see other players and you see their characters running around. So there is intention to eventually add a shared social space like the Tower where you can see other players running around while you're waiting to match up with your friends or you're waiting to pick that next activity. Spaces where you'll have vendors that you pick up loot from, a space where you can just sit down and chat with people and make new friends, because I do think that part is very important. Okay, let's jump into plan systems, and this is going to be both a heavy and light section in the sense that I'm going to kind of fire off on the systems that we plan to bring to the game that I haven't really talked too much about in other areas. As I mentioned at the beginning, some of these I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth than others, because a lot of these systems I would much rather create a very detailed video on when we end up creating them. Right now, the state of the game, though, has been focusing on having our loot system working and having our weapon system working, which they are working. They're in the game, we're happy with them. But with all that said, there are some big systems that still are missing from the game, and they'll be missing for some time because they're going to be quite heavy to add in. But once we get them in, it'll just keep making the game feel more and more complete. So the first one on the list here is talking about the armor system. Destiny's armor system is okay. Diablo, Path of Exile all have armor systems. Borderlands, the last time I checked, doesn't really have much of an armor system. It kind of has like class items and stuff. We will have an armor system. Not really in the spot right now to talk too deeply about that, but I will say it's going to use a very similar system to how our weapon system works, in the fact that armor is going to be dropping random perks of different rarity, and then there would be some apex armors that kind of really alter your build and such. Armor system is one of the ones that we're not worried too much about yet, because that kind of just is a complement to everything else. It affects gameplay, but it doesn't affect the gunplay itself, aside from just giving more power to the player. So once we're really happy with how the loot system feels with dropping on weapons is when we would start looking to add in a armor system. Another big element, which I'm sure some people are curious about, is a class system. Destiny has its hunters, its warlocks, and its titans. And within each of those, there's nodes of customization, various grenades, various melees. We absolutely plan to have a class system. There's actually a really cool system that my co-dev and I have been slowly just writing down on basically a napkin in the background, essentially, figuring out how that's going to work. It's something that's really unique. I'm very excited for this. I don't want to talk too much about this at the moment, but what I can say is there is a class system in the fact that you would pick your core class at the beginning, and then there's customization where you can freely adjust your subclasses afterwards. We plan to have things such as various grenade abilities, melee abilities, etc. And right now we're playing with the idea that instead of saying everyone has a grenade, melee, and class ability, you just have 3 ability slots that you can fit in whatever you want. If you want to run 3 different grenades, you can. If you want to run a melee and 2 grenades, etc. And there is also going to be like supers or ultimates, whatever you want to call them, basically, which is like that one big blast ability that always just adds a lot of fun cinematic elements to the game and to the fights. Just know that we want to make it a very customizable class system. We don't want to tell players, if you pick X, you're definitely a tank. If you pick Y, you're definitely a healer. We actually are coming up with a system that kind of allows players to create their own class definitions, which I'm very excited for. Alright, this next one is an element that does not exist in Destiny. It doesn't exist in Borderlands. It doesn't exist really in Path of Exile. I don't think this really exists in the form that we have planned in any real looter shooter that I'm aware of, but feel free to let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. It's companions / pets. We haven't really decided the official name for it, but right now we're calling them companions. And I don't mean like your ghost that follows you around. I don't mean like in World of Warcraft where you have a mount or you have like a little cosmetic creature that follows you around. This will act as a cosmetic. It will be acting as a way to customize your character further, but they are going to have a lot more use than how you just pull your ghost out in Destiny and it talks to you. The companion is going to act inspired by something like in Diablo, where this little critter would run out and grab gold and bring it back to you. And I always thought that was a really cool little feature, but I always thought you could take it a step further, which is what we're going to do. This companion is going to act as a cool way that in combat, when you see loot out in the distance, your companion is going to go out, grab that loot, bring it back to you. When you see ammo on the ground, same thing. It can run out, grab that ammo, bring it back to you. And there'll be some restrictions like how fast it moves, how far away from you it can move. But the idea is that you have this little extra mechanic now in combat where you're not having to run off to the random side of the map while you're focused on combat in front of you. This little companion is going to be helping you do that. But it's also going to be used down on another level, which is how we're also going to be doing loot filtering. So for those not familiar, something like Path of Exile has this really cool loot filter that players can customize and make their own loot filters to determine how much loot you see on the ground, what stuff can you actually visibly pick up, etc. We're not going to get as detailed as that, but we do plan to make it so that you can decide, hey, I don't want my companion to pick up any common rarity weapons or any common rarity armor. Just making random examples, but the idea is that you'll be able to control what stuff your pet goes out and grabs for you. And then the pet also kind of works as an overflow mechanic similar to Destiny's Postmaster, where if your inventory is full, you'll be able to open up your companion's loadout and see what stuff they picked up so far and quickly filter through it, basically. If you're thinking, oh man, this all sounds great, but that's going to be a lot of stuff for me to have to manage, to figure out like what weapons and stuff like that, we're going to have a loadout system. I don't even know how games release these days without loadout systems. Looking at stuff like Helldivers or looking at how Destiny 2 didn't have a loadout system for a good majority of its lifespan. If we're doing build crafting, which we are, if you're going to have all these different class elements, these different armors, these different weapons, you need a loadout system. So I'll tell you right now, yes, there will be a loadout system. A very small system that I'm, again, kind of surprised I even have to mention, but like I'm surprised games release without them these days, is a ping system. Somehow Destiny has no ping system, but Marathon does. It'll probably start off very bare bones, which is simply you mark a spot. That'll just help with raids and dungeons. This last note, I didn't really have a specific section to put under, so I put under systems. We do plan to have like daily and weekly vendor refreshes. I always thought that was really fun in Destiny and other RPGs and MMOs, that like the world feels alive when these vendors change their loot. I really think it's cool when someone in the community realizes like, oh man, this one particular character has this really good role. You should go and grab it and tell the community that, and everyone's flocking to get this really rare role. I also do want these vendors to have these moments where they do actually stock something really, really crazy, like really good. Like it'd be a low chance, but like the idea is like maybe every so often in a blue moon, they're stocked up with an Apex weapon. So now those players that don't have really good luck or haven't been able to run that high content do have an access to an Apex weapon, but still feels lucky because it's not going to be a common a common thing. We haven't fully talked about what extent these daily and weekly vendor refreshes would work, but it is very inspired by those RPGs and MMOs that do such a system. I think they work well. Having ones also that are focused on certain times of the week, such as like Xur in Destiny used to only come on the weekends, or having a calendar that only comes during holidays, or something like in Stardew where you have like the calendar system and different characters come at different times, I think are always really fun ways to make the world feel breathing and alive, and it gives players a reason that do play daily to check out different things, to go to the tower, to go to the shared social space, to communicate with the community. So definitely have stuff like that in here. So let's jump into an actual system itself, talking about loot. So loot, we have 2 videos already discussing this, and those are 2 of our most popular videos, so I'm going to assume that most people that are seeing this have already watched those. If not, I do recommend checking out those, because I do talk in quite a bit of depth of what our loot philosophy is and how we're designing our loot. So this video, I don't really want to recover what I've already talked about, but I do want to add a few extra elements on top of that. So first of all, we are going to have a larger range of different weapon types. Early on, we'll be focusing on just a few to start, such as hand cannons, SMGs, shotguns, sniper rifle, marksman rifle. But eventually we are going to be adding in more. I do want a very wide arsenal of options for players, so we'll be looking at rockets, grenade launchers, plasma weapons, which would be a unique type of weapon that you could get an SMG that's a plasma, you could get a shotgun that's a plasma, and basically what those do is that you don't need to reload the weapon. The weapon automatically is always at max ammo, but shots remove from your ammo bar directly. So the trade-off is you don't have to worry about reloading in between, but you burn through your ammo bar a lot quickly if you're just holding down the trigger, essentially. We also have a really fun idea for a weapon archetype called wrist weapons, which we need to still flesh out, but the idea is that these would be special alien weapons that kind of rotate around your wrist, and they do a wide array of things. And instead of having a magazine, they just generate slowly back up over time, so you might shoot out 5 of them, and then you have to wait a couple seconds to start restocking them around your wrist. And we feel like we can do a lot of really cool things with this, that these would be weapons that do like nice little bursts, and almost like the opposite of a plasma weapon. They don't eat up your ammo, but you need to just wait before you can keep firing them. So we will definitely have gear tied to missions. I think Destiny had some really cool stuff with 0 Hour and Whisper, which were these secret missions that players would stumble across, and then when you get to the end, you get this very unique exotic that you couldn't find anywhere else. I think that's really interesting, so I'm definitely excited about the idea of creating a few hidden quests and hidden missions that upon completion you get a unique apex that doesn't drop from the whirlpool. I think that just makes sense. It adds a little bit of vibrancy to the world and a reason for players to always keep their eye out when things seem a little bit different, patch over patch. And then finally, talking about loot philosophy, in terms of balance, I'm always in the camp of things. I would much rather have things be strong than weak, but you need to still have edge cases, meaning that some things need to be weaker than others to make the strong stuff feel more exciting. Sometimes that makes something else feel stronger if something else is a little weak. But that being said, I don't really want us to have any spots where something has no use cases. I strongly believe that you should be able to take something and find a spot for it anywhere, even the most niche cases. And when you do look at something and you say, well, there's literally 0 spots in the world that I would use this, that's when we would need to consider buffing things up. Alright, let's talk now about the lifeblood of RPGs, looter shooters, and that's the end game. That content that once you've beaten the main story, you've beaten all the easier content, where do you go next? How do you bring yourself to the next level? This is really important because this is where players take their build crafting to a whole new level. It inspires people to create new builds, drives people to test new things, and it rewards those that get creative, the ones that find the meta builds, the ones that go above and beyond, squeeze out every last little bit of damage resistance. So a common question I've seen in our YouTube comments and on Reddit is, will our game have raids/dungeons? And I will say right now, we absolutely plan to add a raid, and we absolutely plan to have dungeons. Me and my co-dev, as I said, are huge raiders and dungeon divers ourselves. I think that adds a lot. I think a lot of looter shooters don't have those. A lot of looters don't have content like that, and I think those are where you can really show off cool builds. You can do really cool, neat set pieces. Destiny does these very well. Absolutely going to be in the game. Those are obviously really big undertakings, though, to build, so we are not going to be worrying about those for quite some time. We need to get the core game working first. We need to get the core elements in, and then what's going to happen is, because as we build levels, we are going to be designing mechanics for these levels. We will be strengthening our own level design skills. We'll be slowly, at the back of our minds, building out a raid, and then eventually we will pull that out. How exactly those will roll out, don't know yet. We don't know if that'll be in the base game or if that'll come shortly after, but I do think they're really important, so just know that those are on our radar. We do know that the small community that's been growing with us want it. Let's talk aspirational activities within Endgame. So aspirational activities being content that you replay over and over again, reason to play this content over and over again, increasing difficulties, reasons to push your build further. As I mentioned earlier, we're focusing on creating levels that are deep rather than wide, and that's kind of where this element comes into. So looking at ways to create scaling or infinite content, such as procedural generation, or just ways that you would keep playing the mission but slightly different each time and push as far as you can, putting you into other missions, so you're kind of doing a mission playlist. Ideas like that are things that we need to talk about and decide, but know that this is very important about Endgame, and it's something that we are going to actively figure out and we want to have in the base game whenever we do get to release. One idea that I want added into the game sooner rather than later is a leaderboard system. I think Destiny did this for a little bit with their summer activity, and I think with most things in Destiny, they never really innovated on it. I really think that a leaderboard that encourages players to go for the top score has a lot of potential. Imagine if each month a certain mission is picked, and that mission is considered the focus mission for the month. And we have a leaderboard showing the players that have gotten the highest scores in solo, duo, and trios. Right away, you can already imagine the players are going to try pushing to get that top score so they can show it off. This is going to be a leaderboard that anyone can access and see. But we can take it a step further. Why should people push for the top score if there's no reward? Well, it's very simple. We do give a reward then. And I think one easy way to do this would be through a monthly draw element, where at the end of the month, the leaderboard is scanned, and players have an opportunity to win in-game rewards. How I'm imagining this in my head, and these numbers would absolutely change, this is kind of just an elevator pitch, is for every run that you do of the mission, you get one entry into this draw. If you're below top 75%, you don't get any additional entries on top of those. If you're between top 25%, top 50%, you get an additional couple entries. If you're within the top 10%, you get a couple more entries. And if you're within the top 5%, you get even further number of entries. So essentially, you don't need to be the top player in the world to be able to get these rewards. You could also just grind out and just do tons of runs and just get those entries by just running the mission. But if you are in that top 5%, you would technically have a higher chance, obviously. And then what we would do on top of that is there would be guaranteed rewards for the top scores, because I do still believe that if you are in the top, you should get some sort of payout for that, but it doesn't completely eliminate all the people that aren't at the same skill level but still want to have a chance at winning some cool stuff. So I think just a leaderboard like that is something that we can implement early to encourage players to keep coming back to these missions, trying to squeeze out as many points as they can. The last thing I want to talk about endgame content is cosmetic rewards. I'm a huge believer that there should be cosmetic rewards attached to hard content that you can show off. It kind of encourages other players to try and go chase that down themselves. You have people asking like, oh, where did you get that skin? Where did you get that texture for your weapon? And that just pushes people more into the endgame content. Because endgame content, I think, for the hardcore fans is pretty easy to jump into, but for people that are more casual players, it's hard to get into this. So I think by attaching things that look cool into endgame content, that will encourage more people to go in, try the raids, try the dungeons, try to push for that higher leaderboard score. Alright, let's move into our next section, the elephant in the room, monetization. I'm going to start by saying we don't know yet what the monetization plan is for this. This is all going to depend on the popularity, what it costs to keep the servers up for the number of people that are trying to play on the servers, but know that we want to be consumer friendly. We are very aware of the state of the world right now. We have very greedy games asking for a lot of money. You have very predatory cosmetic shops. We have no interest in doing that. We want to be consumer friendly, and there will never, ever be any pay to win in the game. But the truth is that servers cost money, obviously. So we will still need some way to create cash flow. And again, none of this is set in stone. We are going to be still actively discussing what our options are. But some of the things that we have to consider are there might have to be some sort of cheap cosmetic store. It's never going to be like Destiny where you're asking for $15 for a skin. It would be a couple bucks, hopefully at most. And we would absolutely do earnable in-game currency. And we would do it in a way that's a lot more open than how Destiny does Bright Dust. It would be probably similar more to like Supercrets and Helldivers, but not as stingy. We are also, though, considering other options such as a Patreon, offering monthly cosmetic goods for backing the project, possibly even a low tier prior to that for people just simply to support us for a few bucks. But we're not going to be doing that until we have more to show, because I don't think it's right to ask for money when we haven't even proven that the game is as solid as we're hoping it's going to be yet. So hopefully more news on that in the future. Let me know what you guys think about a Patreon for some sort of support. Would love to hear thoughts on this. Kickstarter is always a good option to help give a boost and keep the servers covered for a while for the first few months of launch, and also some development support, bringing in voice acting, animators, some additional music production. It's not a long-term solution, because even if the Kickstarter does well, that won't cover servers forever, but it would help us early on as we try to figure out what the costs are and what our best options are. We've also talked about the idea of releasing DLC packs on an infrequent basis, which contain multiple cosmetics, maybe mission packs, etc. We both are open to this idea, but we also have to be very considerate that, again, with 2 devs, we wouldn't be able to pump out DLC packs on a frequent basis enough to help cover ongoing server costs. But I do want to encapsulate this whole monetization section with saying, take all of this, of what I just said, with a heavy grain of salt. We're still very open to discussion here. We haven't really landed on a spot that we're 100% comfortable with, but I didn't want to do a video talking about the future of Project FireTeam and not talk about this one thing, because it's obviously a big consideration in MMO space, looter shooter space, and just live service game space as a whole. Alright, let's talk about what I'm sure a lot of people are really gung-ho about hearing about, is the release plan. I've already seen a few people highlighting that they're really excited for a prototype. I'm excited for that too. I really want to get people out there to test it, but obviously we need to get the game in a decent state first. So what the release plan that we currently have is, and there's no dates being put in here because we're not going to be promising any dates, because it's going to be ready when it's ready. We're not going to pump something out early just for the sake of getting a couple clicks on a YouTube video. We want to release things when we think they're good to go. So the proof of concept prototype, that would be one that is open for all, and it's something we would build upon for a little bit, adding in new features that we talked about earlier, some of these new systems, and the idea is literally just to stress test stuff. It would very much be used also to help stress test servers, so that I can figure out what elements we need to adjust to make the multiplayer work how it should be working. This is one that I'm hoping that will come sooner rather than later. For me, I always like finessing stuff, so I don't really want to put something out there until you can get a really good feel for what the base gameplay is supposed to feel like, because it will absolutely release in an unfinished state. It's called a proof of concept for a reason, and I just want to make sure I'm stressing the fact that this is not going to be the final form. There's going to be assets that need to be updated. There'll be bugs, lots of bugs. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of out-of-bounds issues, but hopefully that proof of concept will help get people interested in the project and also get you guys involved, because I do really want to hear people's thoughts. Following the proof of concept will come the closed demo, which the closed demo will likely be limited to either a very close pool of people that have been in since the proof of concept stage, and probably Patreon/Kickstarter backers, if that is the route we end up going. Then we would move into an open demo as we get closer, and then finally would be the actual release. Once again, there's no timeline for these, but the proof of concept prototype is one that I am aiming for sooner rather than later, making sure that we're not making any crucial mistakes on the back end that's going to cost us dev time in the long run. Alright, jumping into the last topic here, a very exciting topic is the coming months. We have a lot of stuff in the pipeline. We think we're starting to get closer and closer to the stage of trying to get more eyes on the project. What I would eventually love to do is development streams here directly on YouTube, and use Discord to show photos of progress, discuss progress, just so I can share more frequent updates that don't require me editing an entire video. And as long as there's people that remain interested in the project and hearing about it, I will start doing that. I think that's something that will still be a month or so out, because I want to make sure we're a little bit further into the actual development before I start doing more social media stuff. But that is something that's definitely on the table. I would love to start bringing some fans into a Discord and start talking about the game, so hopefully that's around the corner within the next couple of months. But we have a lot cooking in the background. At the top of the list, which I'm hoping the next video or the following video will cover, is a map called Life Lost Mesa, which is our first official level. That will be the level that the prototype is in, that we will keep building elements on top of. So we're currently working through that. The base terrain has been designed, and we're currently working on doodads to fill up the map, designing actual encounter mechanics and such. Music and sound design, my amazing wife has volunteered to create some music for us and some sounds, so she's working on that, and what we can't get from her, we're grabbing from freesound.org. We are working on concept art and design for our first faction of enemies known as the Seraphs, but the prototype itself will probably honestly launch with still the placeholder ugly spider and weird robot asset, to be honest. That'll be coming much more down the line, as that's a much larger task. We are still working on more weapon designs. My co-dev is our main weapon modeler. He's doing a fantastic job with these, and I'm very excited to get these implemented in the game. And then, as mentioned, we're working on back of the napkin planning on how we're going to implement the class system and the companion system, which both I'm super excited for, and I can't wait to show off. And I think that just about covers it. There's still a few small elements that I didn't really touch on that aren't super crucial, but if there's anything in particular you want to learn more about or know more about, please ask down in the comments. We might not have answers for everything yet, but we will do our best. And we do want to be very open in communication with the player base. I think community is really important in games like Destiny and MMOs. Those are part of the lifeblood that make games succeed or fail. So we're very open to feedback and discussion about anything that you guys think that's important. If you would like to see any particular videos from me about talking about a specific topic in more detail, please let me know. And until then, I will see you guys next time. Thanks for sticking it out, guys.